The rain hammered against the glass walls of Sterling Industries headquarters as Marcus Sterling, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, stood by his 30th floor window, watching the storm rage below. He had built an empire through ruthless determination, sharp business instincts, and an unwavering belief that sentiment had no place in the boardroom. His assistant had just informed him that someone was waiting in the lobby, insisting on seeing him without an appointment. Marcus was about to have security remove whoever it was when his assistant added one detail that made him pause. It was a child. A little girl soaking wet and refusing to leave until she spoke with him personally. Something in that description stirred a memory he had spent years trying to bury. And against every instinct that had made him successful, he told his assistant to send her up. When the elevator doors opened, Marcus found himself staring at a small figure who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She wore a faded pink raincoat that was 2 sizes too big, her dark hair plastered to her face, and her shoes squelched water onto his expensive marble floors with each tentative step. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, large and brown and filled with a determination that seemed far too old for her young face. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest like it contained the secrets of the universe, and when she spoke, her voice trembled, but didn't break. "My dad's sick, so I came instead," she said. And those 7 words would shatter everything Marcus thought he knew about his own life. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to people who need them. Now, let's continue with this remarkable tale. Marcus gestured for the girl to sit, but she remained standing, still clutching that envelope. He asked her name, and she told him it was Emma. He asked who her father was, and she said his name was James Thompson. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. James Thompson. The name hit him like a physical blow, dragging him back 25 years to a friendship he had destroyed through his own ambition and pride. James had been his best friend in college, the brother he never had, the one person who believed in him when he was just a poor kid with big dreams and nothing else. They had started a small tech company together after graduation, working out of James's garage, surviving on ramen noodles and shared dreams of changing the world. But when their first product started gaining traction and investors came calling, Marcus had made a choice that haunted him still. He had pushed James out, convinced the investors that he could run the company better alone, and had used legal technicalities to force his best friend to sign away his shares for almost nothing. James had begged him to reconsider, had reminded him of their friendship and all they had built together. But Marcus had been blind with ambition, telling himself that business was business and sentiment was weakness. The company that Marcus had stolen from James had grown into Sterling Industries, making Marcus a billionaire many times over. He had justified his actions by telling himself that he had done what was necessary, that he had been the driving force behind their success anyway, that James would have held him back. But in the darkest hours of night, when the champagne had worn off and the accolades felt hollow, Marcus knew the truth. He had betrayed his best friend, and that betrayal had cost him the only genuine relationship he had ever had. He had tried to find James over the years, had hired investigators, but James had disappeared, taking his family and starting over somewhere far from the city and the painful memories. And now, 25 years later, James's daughter stood in his office, dripping rainwater onto his floors, telling him that her father was sick. Emma opened the envelope with small, careful fingers and pulled out several documents. There was a medical report that Marcus scanned quickly, his heart sinking with each line. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 3 months to live, maybe less. Treatment options exhausted. The diagnosis was 6 weeks old. Then Emma handed him a letter written in handwriting he recognized immediately. The same neat script that had filled the margins of their college textbooks with ideas and jokes and dreams. Marcus's hands shook as he began to read, and James's words transported him back to a time when they had been young and hopeful and believed that their friendship could weather any storm. Papa letter explained that James had lived a simple life after leaving the city. had married his college sweetheart Sarah, and had raised Emma with love despite their financial struggles. He had worked as a teacher, finding fulfillment in shaping young minds, even though he never stopped missing the thrill of innovation and creation. He had followed Marcus's success from afar, reading articles about Sterling Industries and feeling a complicated mix of pride in what his old friend had accomplished and sadness over what they had lost. The cancer diagnosis had forced James to confront his mortality and his regrets, and he had realized that his greatest regret was not the stolen company or the lost fortune, but the friendship that had been destroyed. He wanted Emma to know her father's full story, including the parts he wasn't proud of and the friend he had loved like a brother. But more than that, James wanted to ask Marcus for something, and it was this request that made Marcus's vision blur with tears he hadn't shed in decades. James wasn't asking for money or apologies or even acknowledgement of what had happened between them. Instead, he was asking Marcus to give Emma an opportunity. Not a handout, not charity, but a chance. Emma was brilliant, James wrote with unmistakable pride, gifted in mathematics and science in ways that reminded him of their younger selves. But they had no money for her education, no resources to nurture her potential, and James knew that without help, Emma's talents might never fully bloom. He was asking Marcus to set up a trust fund for Emma's education, to ensure that she could attend any school she wanted and pursue her dreams without the limitations that poverty imposed. James made it clear that he wasn't trying to guilt Marcus or claim any debt was owed. He was simply a dying father trying to secure his daughter's future, and he was swallowing his pride to reach out to the one person who had the resources to help. Marcus looked up from the letter to find Emma watching him with those impossibly old eyes, and he realized she understood far more than a child her age should. He asked her if she knew what the letter said, and she nodded. Her father had explained everything to her, she said in that small but steady voice. He had told her about their friendship, about the company they had built together, about the betrayal and the years of silence. He had told her without bitterness or anger, simply as facts that had shaped his life. And then he had asked Emma to do something incredibly difficult. He had asked her to bring the letter to Marcus herself, to look the man who had hurt her father in the eyes and ask for help. Emma explained that her father was too weak to travel, that the cancer had spread and the pain was constant despite the medications they could barely afford. Her mother was working 3 jobs to pay for whatever treatment they could manage and to keep food on the table, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Emma had taken 3 buses to get to Sterling Industries, had walked the last 2 miles in the rain because she didn't have money for another fare, had talked her way past security by refusing to leave until someone listened. She had done all of this because her father had asked her to, and because she loved him more than anything in the world. But she also did it for another reason. And when she finally told Marcus what that reason was, he felt something break open inside his chest. Emma said that her father talked about Marcus sometimes, late at night when he thought she was asleep. He would tell stories about their college days, about the crazy ideas they had pursued, and the laughter they had shared, and the way they had believed they could change the world together. And even though Emma knew that Marcus had hurt her father badly, even though she knew the story should have made her angry, what she heard in her father's voice was something else entirely. She heard loss and longing and a grief that had nothing to do with money or business success. She heard a man mourning a friendship that had meant everything to him, missing a brother he had lost not to death, but to ambition. Her father had forgiven Marcus years ago, Emma said quietly, because holding on to anger took energy he needed for loving his family. He just never had the courage to reach out until cancer forced his hand. Marcus walked to his desk and sat down heavily, his legs suddenly unable to support him. The empire he had built, the success he had achieved, all of it turned to ash in his mouth as he looked at this small, brave girl who had traveled across the city in a storm to deliver her dying father's final request. He thought about all the years he had wasted, all the money he had accumulated, all the power he had wielded, and none of it mattered in the face of what he had lost. James had been right all along. The things that mattered weren't balance sheets or market share or quarterly earnings. They were friendship and love and integrity and the ability to look at yourself in the mirror without shame. Marcus had traded all of that for an empire that suddenly felt like a prison. He made a decision in that moment that would alter the course of his life. He told Emma that he would do far more than set up a trust fund for her education. He would establish a full scholarship foundation in James's name, one that would help not just Emma, but hundreds of other brilliant children who lacked resources. He would fund James's medical care, bringing in the best doctors and ensuring that whatever time James had left would be as comfortable as possible. And most importantly, he would go to James himself, would kneel beside his old friend's bed and beg forgiveness for the betrayal that had haunted them both for 25 years. He would tell James that he had been wrong, that the success meant nothing without people to share it with, that he would give it all back if he could have just one more day of the friendship they had once shared. Emma's face transformed with a smile that was pure sunshine breaking through storm clouds, and Marcus realized he was crying openly now, tears streaming down his face as 25 years of regret and grief finally found release. He made calls immediately, mobilizing his resources with the same efficiency he had always brought to business matters, but with an entirely different motivation. Within an hour, he had top oncologists on their way to evaluate James, had accountants setting up the scholarship foundation, and had his private jet being fueled for a flight to the small town where James lived. He asked Emma if she would take him to her father, and she nodded eagerly, taking his hand with a trust he knew he didn't deserve but vowed to earn. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if it reminded you of the importance of forgiveness and the relationships we too often take for granted, please let us know in the comments below. Your engagement helps spread these meaningful stories to others who need to hear them. The flight was quiet, with Emma sleeping against his shoulder and Marcus staring out at the clouds, trying to find the words he would say to the friend he had betrayed. When they arrived at the small house on the edge of town, Marcus felt his heart pounding as Emma led him inside. James was in a hospital bed in the living room, thin and pale, but with eyes that lit up when he saw who had arrived with his daughter. The two men looked at each other across 25 years of silence, and Marcus found that all the speeches he had prepared dissolved on his tongue. Instead, he simply said the three words that mattered most. "I'm so sorry." What happened in that room over the next hour would remain between them. But when Marcus finally emerged, his face was transformed with a peace he hadn't felt in decades. James had forgiven him, truly and completely, and in that forgiveness, Marcus found something he hadn't even known he was searching for: redemption. They couldn't get back the years they had lost, but they could make the time James had left meaningful. Marcus moved his work to the small town, spending every day with his old friend, talking and laughing and remembering the dreams they had once shared. Please take a moment to comment below with the word forgiveness if you believe it's never too late to make things right. James lived for 3 more months, but they were months filled with love and reconciliation and friendship restored. When he finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, Marcus was there, holding his hand and whispering promises to take care of Emma and Sarah as his own family. True to his word, Marcus ensured that Emma received the finest education, but more than that, he became the uncle she had never had, filling some of the space her father's death had left behind. The Scholarship Foundation grew into one of the largest in the country, helping thousands of children pursue their dreams. And every year on the anniversary of James's death, Marcus would visit his grave and tell his old friend about all the lives they were changing together, about the legacy of forgiveness and second chances that had grown from the ashes of their broken friendship. The little girl who had walked into his office during a rainstorm had given Marcus something far more valuable than anything his empire could buy. She had given him the chance to become finally the man he should have been all along.